Okay, so good morning, everybody, wherever you are in the world, and thank you for joining us for this Developer Direct community broadcast. My name is Stephen Ball. I'm going to be hosting today, and joining me online, we have David Millington. Good morning, David.
Morning, Stephen. How's it going?
Hey, better put my headphones on so I can hear everybody. That's a good start. And I believe Marco's online as well. Morning, Marco.
Yep, I'm here.
Cool. So yeah.
Video.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey. So we've got our webcams on just so we can say hello. As I'm sure everybody else is, all working from home at the moment, and we had some great feedback. Thank you for that from last week when we had a specific session talking about working from home, and we've got the replay available for that up online. If you just go to my blog at delphiball.co.uk, you'll be able to find that up in the recent items there. Today we're going to go through an IDE special. From the feedback we had, there's lots of different topics people are interested in kind of having a conversation around, and one of them was very much about kind of some of the kind of cool stuff that we're working on, and one of the great areas that's had a lot of innovation recently has been around the IDE. So as we have David, who's the product manager for the IDE specifically, thought it'd be a great chance to kind of go through talking about the IDE and the user experience stuff that's been going on. And we'll also kind of touch into some of David's favourite bits around debugging and some of the kind of cool bits that you can do with breakpoints and so on. And one of the other kind of conversation areas, specifically from the IDE, that we had a few inquiries and want for more information around was the deployment side. And Marco's going to take us through some of that side of things. So I think probably the best thing to do just to kick off, let's say, please use GoToMeeting chat. I see a number of you already kind of throwing some questions, the good mornings anyway, to start in. This is live, so we will interject anything specific that's pertinent as we kind of go through. And we'll have some time for some kind of live Q&A where anybody can open their mic up at the end, so please feel free to join in at that point. But let me hand over to David, and maybe we can share some of the stuff that you want to do around the IDE and the UX side.
Oh, thanks, Stephen. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. So I actually have the IDE up and running, so I will share screen.
Okay, I've just sent you over a presenter, so you should be able to pull that up.
Thanks. Should be looking be able to see the IDE?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's gone to the dark side. Look at that.
Yeah. I think that's visible for everyone. That's fantastic when you're really working in the evening. I thought I'd run through a few things that we changed in 10.3 because not everyone might have seen those yet, even though 10.3 has been out for a year. As well as a couple of the productivity add-ons that we added. They're optional, so you might not have them installed. And once done, I'll move on to sort of showing a few debugging tips and tricks, which you may or may not know of, but if you don't, you might find really useful. So many of you are hopefully using 10.3 already, and you're used to seeing the IDE in both light mode and dark mode. You can change it via this menu up here on the title bar. You choose dark or light. I'll leave it on dark for the time being, since I think it looks really good. Now in 10.3, we redid a lot of the UI and UX. As you can see, this looks a lot cleaner than Delphi used to in sort of 10.2 and before. Now everything is still in the same place, but I like to think of it as the UI being cleaned up a little in terms of spacing and alignment and kind of things. A few of the things we did, for example, are the title bar of each sort of dock panel, like the tool palette here or the projects view, is now taller. It's clickable. It's bigger than the mouse cursor. Click targets are a really important concept in UI design. You want to make something big enough that you can sort of wave your mouse towards it and hit it. If something is very small, then it's more easy to do that. So the title bars here were a good example of something that was very narrow and actually quite difficult to click on. They're slightly larger now. And we did the same thing with the editor tabs up here. They're slightly taller as well. Not much, only a few pixels, but it really adds something to being able to easily sort of move your mouse and click. Something else we did is to make it really clear where keyboard focus is. Sometimes you have the IDE and you want to type, and you need to know where your keys are going to go. Are they going to go into the code editor, into the object inspector, into the search bar in the tool palette? In 10.2 and before, it was sometimes a little difficult to spot what was focused, to spot what had the keyboard focus, because the UE signifier there was very small or sometimes non-existent. And in 10.3, we changed it so that the part of the IDE that has the keyboard focus always has a thick blue bar. So here I've just clicked on the projects view in the top right. You can see its title bar has a solid blue color. If I click somewhere in the tool palette, you can see immediately that that is the one that has the solid blue. That means the palette has the focus. If I go back to the code editor, you can see the same blue color is now used for the tabs, whereas a different lighter blue is used when it's not focused. So it's really easy to sort of track around the IDE and see really what part is focused and what isn't, simply through through that indication of keyboard focus. We made a bunch of other changes as well. You might notice here in the structure view on the left, I have a selected item. Here it's fbitmap. When I click away from that so that the editor is focused, you can still see which item is selected. And the same happens for the projects view here on the right. I have one file that's selected, and when you click away, that's still selected. These kind of themes about making focus clear, about making selection clear, about making things clickable, have been applied throughout the IDE. The main window is probably the best place to show it. But we apply them through some of the dialogues and that kind of thing as well. You'll notice as well, just like a lot of the spacing is cleaned up, everything looks sort of aligned on the same grid and so forth. Something else we did, might show you the project options. Both the project and the IDE options, as well as the IDE itself, have a search bar up here. So you can click in there and you can type something. If you want to look for a particular option, then you can just search the dialogue. You can search the whole dialogue easily, just to find the option that you're after. You click that and it will take you to the appropriate page. Find some other interesting options here. You can see they're sometimes difficult to find. You can do that in the IDE options as well. We have something like 100 pages of options in the IDE, so being able to search for within the dialogue itself is a really nice addition.
Yeah, I must say I've been doing.
So that was a super quick overview. Oh, sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
That's right. I've been doing some coding in the evenings recently, and having the updates around the IDE options have just been so much easier to find what I'm looking for. And I've been using Delphi for years. Delphi 3 was, I think, the first version I was really cutting my teeth on, and it's just so much simpler and easier now to find your way around what's what and what's where. Really does make a big difference.
Yeah, I think it does. In 10.3 as well, we actually changed the layout of the options slightly. There were a few items where we moved the settings around. For example, the settings you can see on screen about saving files when you compile or run, or something like that, used to be in a different location. Now, we're quite careful sort of rearranging options because we don't want to change things too much, because people look for things by habit, by where you're accustomed to. But it is equally important to have an arrangement that makes sense, a location that makes sense. And having the search box in the options dialog was a real help, because it meant that we could move options, and we would know that if someone was confused and unable to find one, that the search was there to help. So by the way, while I'm doing this presentation, sharing screen, I can't actually see the chat or questions that come in. So Stephen, if you wouldn't mind reading out any that appear, I'd be happy to answer them. But moving on while people type here, that was a super brief overview of some of the stuff that we added in 10.3. In 10.3, we also added a couple of...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Oh, so there was one question from Erwin here asking, are there any plans to do a full rebuild of a lighter and cross-platform IDE?
Sorry, a full rebuild of a...
I think you said a lighter, I think in terms of a less feature-packed IDE that's cross-platform.
It's certainly something we're thinking about. We don't have plans on the roadmap for that at the moment. I'd be interested what platform you want that for, Linux or Mac OS, and why as well. You can always drop me an email about that, because having that kind of data that you want it and you want it for this particular platform and for this reason is really useful for us when we make judgments and decisions about what to what to do in the future. Yeah, I really like the idea of adding on. So yeah, please send me an email.
I think we'll probably circle back to that question a little bit later on during Marco's session, because some of the very cool features around the IDE now enable us to not have to suffer with a lighter version, but still being able to do what we need to do on the other platforms where we're targeting out to with kind of PA server and some of the other parts. So we'll possibly circle back around to that one a little bit later on as well.
Sure. In terms of lighter, I mean, we're always trying to improve the IDE. And, I forget the exact stats now, but in 10.3 it started up a lot faster than 10.2. 10.2.2 started up a lot faster than 10.2.1. I think we've cut the IDE startup speed in half over the past year and a half or so as well. Yeah, constantly doing that kind of work to improve it. A couple of the other things we added in 10.3 are some productivity features. Now, the first one was for bookmarks. In IDE, you're probably used to using a shortcut, say Control-Shift-1 through 9 to place bookmarks. We have a new bookmark system that you can instead, where you just press Control-B for bookmark, and it will add a bookmark somewhere. You can see I'm just adding one here. This is a nice sort of animated indicator as I add one. And as I press Control-B on a line where there's already a bookmark, it will vanish again. And you can view those in the dockable window here. Dock that over the palette, where you can actually see a list of the bookmarks that you have. Let's see one here and a second here. It has a few other nice indicators. If I use one of the existing old shortcut keys to set a specific bookmark, such as setting bookmark number 2, now I've already got bookmark 2 set. You might not really want to override it, so if I just press Control-Shift-2, you'll see, because bookmark 2 is actually off screen to the top, you'll see a little animated indicator at the very top of the gutter, indicating that the bookmark is there, and so it's not setting it. So instead of seeing something red, you'll see something blue and either to the top or bottom. Of course, if I really want to set it to override that, I can just double tap and that will override that specific bookmark. And this dockable window here is nice because you have this context as well. This bookmark is in the class T grid. This one is in the enum of T painting. That's a bookmark somewhere here. You can see that number 3 is the code here. The line of code, which is quite large at the moment because I increased the size in the code editor earlier. But also just contextually, you can see where it is. It's in the compare grid method, which is useful. And it does something else which is nice. You can set some caret bookmarks. So you just press Control-Shift-B. It's quite small, but you can see there's this little arrow here, this little vertical arrow in a particular position. And you can set those anywhere you want. They'll keep the cursor location as well as the line. And the neat thing about those is that, well, first of all, you can see it listed here, of course, in the docked window. I just went to carrots here. The neat thing about those is that they form a stack. So you can sort of drop a trail of breadcrumbs wherever you've been. Often you might be looking for something in the IDE and you want to have sort of, oh, I've been here, but I'm going to go on somewhere else. I want to be able to go back. Carrot bookmarks let you go back just by pressing escape. So press escape, I go to the third one, press escape, and I'm going to go to this one. You can see where I'm waving the mouse cursor. Press escape again, I'll go back to the first. So it's sort of like a stack, and then you pop off the stack and you can go backwards.
Cool. And how did you lay those? Control Shift B. Was that
Control Shift B? So it's Control B just to place a normal bookmark or to remove it, and Control Shift B to place a carrot, and then escape to go backwards.
Yeah, but that's a really useful feature. Does it work at debugging time as well?
It really is.
Yeah.
The other useful thing there is that you can use it to toggle between two code points. So I tend to find that often, especially when debugging, I want to refer to a couple of things. And sometimes I do this when I'm trying to write code as well. So I have sort of the code where I'm working, and then I want to have a look at another bit of code that I want to consult. And sometimes, of course, if you have multiple monitors, you can just have two code editors up on the screen. But you also sometimes just want a way to toggle between two locations. So the way to do that is you place a carrot bookmark, so Control Shift B here. You can even just go off to another unit and place another carrot bookmark. So instead of placing a bookmark here, what I would do from this location to go back to the carrot I just dropped normally is press escape. But here I'll press Shift Escape. And Shift Escape takes me back where I was, but drops a carrot before doing that. And that means that I can now just keep on pressing Shift Escape, and I will toggle between two locations in any pair of units.
That's pretty cool.
It is. It's rather useful. And the other thing we added is the minimap that you can see on the code editor on the right. A minimap is a small version of your whole unit, and it's used because you often have a visual picture in your mind of what your code looks like. You know what the type area looks like, or what a particular method with lots of comments looks like, and so forth. So you can see on the right-hand side of the code editor, between the scroll bar here and the dock windows, there's this little mini painted representation of the code. Now I can mouse over that, and I can see a zoomed-in view of the code at that particular location. And I can just sort of pick up and drag to scroll that as well. And you can see that the highlighted bit is represented here on screen. So you can see I have a couple of comments here. There are 3 comments, and you can see, sure enough, I have a little sort of green blob here in the minimap. And this is what I mean about sort of recognizing a code array.
So David, there's a question here from Eric. Is there a way to change the keyboard shortcuts or to create your own keyboard mappings yourself?
Not entirely. The keyboard mappings aren't fully customizable. We do have a set of pre-built mappings that you can change. But one thing we'd like to do eventually is to create a full IDE keyboard editor. Currently we don't really have that. We have a set of pre-made ones, the standard Delphi one, and then ones that are sort of compatible if used to other IDEs, which you can toggle in the IDE options.
Okay, cool.
I think that's a nice overview of some of the things we've added recently and some of the productivity things that are in 10.3.
Great.
Do you have any more questions sort of on that area? Otherwise, I might move on to a few debugger.
No, it's couple other questions, or not other questions really, just a kind of comment from Ilwin saying there's the CN pack, GExperts, MMX code. There's all they all have kind of different bits of these kind of capabilities, kind of in different add-on packs as well, which you can add in. So yeah, there's lots of different things that you can add to the IDE. It's one of the nice things about the IDE, being able to add different capabilities and features into it, and having the Open Tools API to be able to do some of that. But it's nice that the kind of the popular stuff is kind of getting more and more embedded into the IDE itself as well, which is great, without having to go and find and keep updated and do all the other kind of bits that you need to do to kind of set your IDE up in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have the Open Tools API, and we really like people writing plugins for it, and CNPack and GExperts and MMX are great add-ons.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we add something, we try to choose it well and implement it in a way that feels very Delphi as well, and we do want it to feel integrated within the IDE. It's great to have the other add-ons that add more functionality.
But I think this is a classic example of some of the great work David's been doing with the IDE. It's about talking to you guys, talking to the developer community, and finding out what are the kind of key things that you want to have integrated and added in, and what productivity features are you kind of desiring in and around, and how you're going to be using them. Because I think that's the most important thing, isn't it, David, to understand what it is and how that people are wanting to use it, how it's kind of bringing value to them in their daily life, so we can then help prioritize kind of future developments within the IDE.
Yeah, we definitely plan to add many more things into the IDE in the future. So as Stephen says, feedback on what we'd like to see is really useful.
So one of the other things that you mentioned that you wanted to kind of share with us was about the conditional breakpoints and like some of the debugging elements.
Sure. Look, debugging. I mean, debugging is a huge topic, so I cover everything about debugging in one demo. Let me just increase the font size here. But one thing that I've found is that many people aren't aware of all of the features that we have just in breakpoints. And breakpoints are a very, very simple feature on the surface of it. You place a breakpoint, and when you run the IDE pauses execution and stops execution. But we have quite a lot of fairly advanced features that have actually been in the IDE for quite a while. So I thought I might run through and demo a few of those. So I wrote about 10 minutes ago. I wrote this amazing code that you can see on screen, which basically just loops and then increments a couple of variables. And I thought this would be useful to demonstrate a couple of things with breakpoints. So hopefully the text font size is large enough to see when screen sharing. You're probably all used to just placing a breakpoint by clicking in the gutter. There is a breakpoints window, which I have on screen here. If you don't have that, you can always go to the View Debug Windows breakpoints. It's just the very top one in the menu. If you want to keep it there, by the way, you can always edit desktop layouts. So now that I've moved this here or made it visible, I can just go here and I can save the desktop. And if I just accept that, like I just accept the name of LEDs, that will just overwrite the version I already have, and that will become my new default. You can do the same for the debug desktop or the IDE startup desktop as well. But this is a breakpoint that we're probably all familiar with. So really just showing it sort of just to have something to compare to, which is that I click this button, and then the IDE will come along and it will run here, and it will pause execution at this breakpoint. And you see you can access the various threads, and you can see the call stack, and variables and so forth. Everything that's you're probably already familiar with. But I want to show a couple of interesting features. So you can right-click on a breakpoint, and you can do this in the breakpoints window as well. Choose the breakpoint properties. And there are a number of things here that you can set and expand. There are a number on screen, and then there's even a little advanced button, so there are even more. One of them is you can set a breakpoint to not break every time. You can set it to break only when a particular condition is true. So here, because we're looping in I from 0 to 10, I might only want to break when I is 5. So I'll do that. This time when I run this, the IDE stops and breaks as well. But it hasn't paused the first time that it went through the loop. It's gone through the loop several times, and it's only now that this particular variable has this particular value that it's actually paused. And if you look in the properties, you can do this for any condition. There's a very simple condition. A condition is just an expression that is true or false. You can write some reasonably complex conditions in here or methods. You could, for example, only break when a particular function returns true, or a particular function returns a particular value. Something like that is a good condition. Another way to achieve something similar would be a pass count. So sometimes you want to break in a particular spot, but you don't want to do it the first time. Here, because it's a loop, I can just set the loop condition. But I can also say that I want to pass through this breakpoint, let's say 7 times before I actually break for the first time. So I can set the pass count to 7. And I will go through again. And you can see that it's paused here, but it would have gone through 7 times before doing so. Oops, turn it off. Set it again. A few other things here as well. You can set the thread so it'll only break when the breakpoint has been executed in a particular thread context. You can group breakpoints. But what I want to show as well is skipping past all of those. They're all documented, and please check them out. I want to show you a breakpoint that doesn't break. So this might seem a little odd on the face of it, because you normally think of the purpose of a breakpoint as one where you set it and then at a particular condition or when the breakpoint is met, you'll pause execution, and then you can go and actually do something in the app while you're debugging. But a breakpoint can occur, can fire, and doesn't always have to pause execution of the program. You can simply do something else instead. So to do this, you have a breakpoint and uncheck the break action here. So the moment that happens, when the breakpoint fires, it will still fire, but it will no longer actually break. It will no longer pause execution. And you can do something else. So for example, I can say, I'm going to make this conditional, again, when I equals 5, just to demonstrate a few things once. But I don't want it to break. I want it to log a message when I get here. So I'm going to say that I is 5. And I want to evaluate the expression. I'm going to type a simple expression here of j, because I have some other variable here. Anything else you can evaluate, you can type here. I want to log the call stack. I'm going to log the entire call stack. So what this is useful for is for tracing through your program through execution. If something is happening and you want to find out the state and you want to get a log of state, then you can set breakpoints. You can make them not break, but you can make them report the call stack for how do they get to the current line of code. And you can evaluate some current state. Pretty much anything that you can evaluate in the debugger, you can evaluate here. And so you can do this when you're a bit puzzled with your code and you want to understand more what's going on, or you want to understand the flow, or you want to track how something changes over time. Here, when I do this, I'll click the button again, and it appears that nothing happened because the breakpoint didn't actually break. I'll go down to the events view here and make that larger. And scroll up, you can see that we have a bunch of information here. You can see that the breakpoint was hit on line 40. You can see it sent out a message. It says the breakpoint message I is 5. And it printed out the call stack when it was hit. You can scroll through that. You can see the expression. I asked it to evaluate j, and j has the value 105. And you can do all these things, scatter a wide variety of breakpoints throughout your app to really get a good sense of what's going on in your app and to trace through. I've used this technique quite a bit when I knew a particular bit of code that was actually executed quite often, so I didn't want to have to put a normal breakpoint in there and click run 100 times. When that code was executed in particular situations and something odd happened on the way, and using techniques like this to place breakpoints in the various code paths that could lead to that particular location and to evaluate the state both in those code paths and then as it got to that particular location can be really useful to help track down particularly difficult code problems. So those are normal and I guess conditional and advanced breakpoints. There are a few other breakpoint things I can show as well if people are interested. And can't really see the chat messages. I'll just assume people are interested. I think this is enormously valuable. So in the breakpoints list here, we have a button to create a new breakpoint, and normally that will just create a source breakpoint, one particular line. You can add data and address breakpoints as well. There's actually a fourth type, which is a module breakpoint. And so I might demonstrate all of those. Now, a data breakpoint allows you to break when data somewhere in memory changes. So again, using this particular example, I have a field here called fValue. And let's assume in a non-trivial app that my variable can actually be changed at some point from a number of places of code. And I know it's changing, but I don't know what's changing it. And I really want to track that down. So I can add a data breakpoint here. And I can put in an address. So type in form1 at form1.fValue. And there are a few other settings here. You can have length. It's an integer. It's 32-bit integer, so it's just 4 bytes long. So I'll leave that alone. But you'll recognize a bunch of the other advanced settings for a breakpoint as well. So what I'm doing here is I'm watching that address, and I'm watching 4 bytes of that address, which matches the type of integer. Click OK there, and I now have a data breakpoint. So what will happen is that when I run the app, or rather when the app is running, and when that data is changed, the app will break. So I click this button, you'll see that the IDE has broken, has paused. And that's not because I placed a breakpoint on the line saying to increment fValue. It's because the 4 bytes at the address of fValue, so fValue's value, were changed, and the breakpoint there that's watching that data in memory broke. And so you can see we're just here broken in as normal, and we have call stack and stuff exactly as you would normally expect. And this is a really powerful technique for for watching when you can often have a problem where something changed and you don't know what's changing it. And it's a really powerful technique for catching that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It is.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of
I'm not going through this
data breakpoints.
All right. Well, it's yeah, really useful technique. A couple of other things I can show, and I'll go through those quickly. So I've just said normal breakpoint again, just for the sake of doing something here. But something that you might not know as well is that you have a call stack here, but you can actually set a breakpoint in the call stack. So I have a bunch of methods here, and you can see I'm in various form VCL controls T1 control.main and proc, or the T-forms when proc or something like that. You can see on the left there are the blue and grey dots, and those look exactly like the blue dots that you get in the source editor, indicating whether you can place a breakpoint or not. And that's not coincidence, because you can place a breakpoint here. So I can just click on the left of the call stack. And you can see I now have a breakpoint here on tcustomform.winprop. So if I run again, you can see that winprop is going to be fired all the time because Matthew is constantly getting messages. And sure enough, it's broken here. And that's a really useful technique as well. And you can actually place address breakpoints at any particular location. What I might do here is go to the CPU view. And you can see here that the breakpoint was placed on this particular line. Given the call stack, that was the instruction or the line of code that the debugger was going to be next aware of in the call stack, and I placed it there. But of course, every particular line of code, and I can just click here to toggle a breakpoint within the CPU view. Every particular line of code translates to multiple assembly instructions usually. And we're used to the concept of setting a breakpoint on a particular line of source, but if you want, you can also set a breakpoint for a particular instruction. So here I'm going to set it for this call to inherited prop. For whatever reason, I'm probably debugging something really complex. I want to figure out what this particular move instruction is doing. So I will just click here and place a breakpoint on this particular instruction itself. So I'll run again, and you can see again, because this is in the window message handling, that's just going to be called all the time. That has broken here, and it's broken on this specific instruction. And from here in the CPU view, I can step over and step into jump and call instructions and that kind of thing, very much as you might think of doing just from the source.
Cool. We've got
That's a very powerful technique as well.
We've got a question here from Eric. He's asking if the address event-based breakpoints is Delphi only, and or is there a C++ equivalent?
I will need to check. I'm actually not sure off the top of my head.
Yeah,
usually for Win32, features like that are equivalent across both Delphi and C++. We're doing a bunch of work on the debugger right now, in fact, so it's something I will have a look at.
Yeah, so the option is disabled in C++ builder, apparently. But yeah, we can have a look at that, and maybe as we kind of move over to talk about some of the deployment capabilities within the IDE with Marco, then I'll leave David have a search around and come back with the answer for that one, Eric.
Yeah.
So,
and something that's interesting is that we have quite a few different debuggers. I mean, we have the Win32 one and the one for Win64 and Android and iOS and so forth.
mm-hmm.
And so each of those have different capabilities. They all have the same basic capabilities with some exposed features that others don't. But it's always worth poking around and seeing what's available for the particular platform. Of course, we're trying to focus on the debugger and expand those as well.
Yeah, I guess.
Sorry, go ahead.
I guess one of the big topics obviously has been with the new platforms that have been coming into the IDE, using the Clang compilers and some of the kind of uniform tooling and support that enables for the future. Does that kind of help when we're working across the different platforms with kind of unifying that debugging support, or does it bring different challenges?
It should do. I mean, we have on our roadmap a few things to do with the debugger and trying to unify debuggers, and when that happens, that will sort of assist in unifying features as well. Although, of course, everything can be platform specific, but in general, that's the idea that unify on technology and features and that kind of thing. There's more as well. I mean, I didn't get to module breakpoints, for example, which are breaking when a particular DLL or package is loaded. And we go into address breakpoints more for breaking on particular.
Sounds like a code range session.
An API method or something. Yeah, it probably does. But I hope that was like a good overview of just very quick of some of the more advanced features, just like hiding really even in one very basic feature in the debugger.
Yeah, no, really useful. Some great productivity points there. So, okay, Marco, I see you've got the presenter stack there.
Sure. Is the screen visible?
Yeah.
It is. Sorry for taking so much time, Marco. I estimated 30 minutes for that, and now
it's fine. I don't have much to say, so I'll be much quicker. Yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention is cover some of the options around deployment that we have introduced. and mostly on Windows, but then we can also touch about what's available on the for the mobile platform. Now, I don't have all of the mobile platform configured, so I won't be able to demo everything. But now the Windows side is interesting because, of course, you can. This is a do-nothing application. I don't really care much. You can compile it. If you build it, of course, let's say build sorry, because it's called deploy. It's funny. It's the wording. So what you get to, sorry, this opens in a separate window. Of course, is an executable. You just take it, put it anywhere. It's going to work fine. This is the good old Windows style of copying files and Xcopy deployment. There's no dependency. There's no issue. So quick and nice. But Windows is starting to get into Windows as a platform. Is starting to shift into a direction where the idea is not that you take an executable, you run it. And the reason is mostly because this is the source of all disasters in terms of protection, malware, Trojan, whatever type of application that you can get up on a system. So Microsoft has been continuously pushing for not allowing end users to just run an executable taken from the internet or from nowhere. Now they haven't got to the extreme of preventing non-signed application or application not downloaded from the store to install, but this is the direction they're going to. Apple is ahead, or they can probably afford being a bit more aggressive. Like today on Catalina, you can only install applications that are either downloaded from the store or they are they go through the notarization process, which basically is you take your binary, you push it to Apple. Apple does a scan for like API usage, whatever. It's associated with your credentials as a developer, and then Apple gives you like a stamp of approval, and then you can run it locally. It's not like a strong encoding, it's not a strong vetting, but it is a step in that direction. Now, going back to Microsoft policies depend on what is configured. That's true for an enterprise. For an end user, the policies are quite flexible. But the direction is going towards the model that only store application or only application that go through a process of having sort of installer, whether it's Apex or MSIX, one of the models they're supporting. Eventually, in the future, this will become the only option to deploy. You won't be able to take an executable copy on a USB drive or via the internet, download on a machine and run. This is ultimately what they want to achieve. Now, going back to what we have in the product, we have the ability to do deployment of this application by going through the to make it available as a Windows application through their application store platform, or an ad hoc distribution of the same application. So the model is that you want to sign the application, and that's one of the steps. Now you need to sign it, and if you want to do a direct distribution, you don't need to sign it if you go to the store. If you go to the store, it's Microsoft that signs the application on your behalf. So the step is slightly different. And for simple testing, you can go with a self-signed certificate. I should have one somewhere. I can also create one, but I think I have one in my code folder somewhere. Where is that? Let's try here. Oh, this one should do. Hopefully it's not expired. Okay, it is not. Oops, sorry. I pressed enter, but that closed the dialog, of course. Sorry, let me get back there. Store. Okay. So with my certificate, you can see here the certificate information. Well, it is expired actually. Wonder if that's going to work anyway. But what I'm trying to do here is to deploy my application, creating an Apex file. Let me see if this does work. Actually, I can do deploy. Wait, what am I missing? Oh no, sorry. I just need to do build and build for the store. So in the target platforms, I need to go for an application store build. This does require the SDK because that signing utility are part of the SDK. And then if you build for, or even run if you want, not that is very useful. If you build for the store, then there are extra steps that are going to happen. And it might end up telling me that my certificate is expired. Well, it didn't. So let's see what happened here. So let's see if no, I haven't actually done it right.
Yeah, you're still on debug. Do you need to do it on a release build?
No, I don't think that's needed, honestly. If I do application store and let's see if I run it. Okay, I don't know. Okay, I should have done an extra step. Okay, sorry. No certificate were found that met the criteria given. Okay, I'm sure because that's expired. Sorry, I should have tried before. Let me try to do it again. So options. And I'm back to the deployment provisioning. I'm not going to use this certificate because this is faulty. So I'm going to create a new certificate. Again, it's a self-signed certificate, so whatever. And I'm going to use a nice password. And okay, I need to place it somewhere. Let's drop it on here. Well, sorry. Place it where the other one was. Okay, so this is my file. This is my password. This is me as the owner. I'm going to go for it. Okay, new certificate. Now the new certificate is available and it's not expired, unlike the previous one. So if I save it and I do again run, it should be deploying, and it is doing it. So the run doesn't run it because what is building an Apex file. And now if we go back to the folder, what was it here? Oops, too many folders open. Oh, sorry. It went behind and then I moved it enough so I forced it to close. Okay, so now we should have. Okay, so here there's one thing that's worth noticing, that it did create a manifest template that's going to be used as a template for the manifest. For my application, includes a couple of icons and things you, of course, you're going to replace. Then under my folder, I have, again, the final manifest. Now the template is manifest with the extra information added to it. And then there is a deploy folder. The deploy folder has several things. It has the executable that was pushed into the Apex file, the manifest, the additional asset, which are just these two default graphics that you can configure from the project options. And then finally, under bin, there is the actual result of the activity, which is the Apex file. Now, this is not a file that you can run, but it's a file you can install on the local machine. Now, this is never going to work because I need to have a permission is going to take place once I activate the application. So this is untrusted. The certificate is not known. So if I do install, it's going to break because the certificate is not trusted. I use a self-signed certificate. So the next step, which I'm not going to do, you have to validate your certificate locally, saying that the certificate is trusted, and so you can deploy on your machine even with a self-signed certificate. If you have a real certificate, this is going to work, I mean, out of the box. With a self-signed certificate, you need to add it to the trusted certificate on your machine, which it's an extra step. I mean, it takes a little. Once that's done, what happens is that the application is just added to the system in the Windows, in one of the hidden folders under your hard drive, which is namely under program files, Windows apps, and of course, gosh, okay. I should be able to get permission. Yeah. Okay. Under the folder are all of the Apex files. I've used generally demo with a different machine that has everything set up. But application installed here, there are versions, so you can have multiple versions of the same application sitting side by side, and they will just pop up as regular application on your system. The other option, again, is to go for store deployment. But to really do the store deployment with the store credential, you first need to create the application on the Windows Store platform, and then you need to enter the IDs that Microsoft provides you for in the configuration settings. So these two options here. If you go for not for store, for store, so this package name, display name, publisher name, specifically the package name, this is partially your name and partially a unique ID that Microsoft provides you. So you can't just type what you want here. You need to create the application entry in the Microsoft Store system and then copy the information into these fields, and they must match. Otherwise, that's not going. When you publish it, it's not going to go. Okay, that's kind of the summary. Sorry for the partially blocked demo, but that's the process. So it's really straightforward to create an Apex, and then the Apex can be deployed to your computer, customer computer, again, once you have a certificate. And that really opens a lot of opportunities for enterprise deployment and for other models, because installing an Apex is something that's universally allowed, even with enterprise systems that are kind of on closer guard, meaning people cannot install freely. In generally, installing an Apex is considered safe by administrator, and users have permission to install an Apex, while they do not have permission to install like a regular application on their system. Now, of course, it's not a hard-coded rule. I mean, there are different settings application administrators can use, but that's the plan, and that's the direction Microsoft is really pushing towards. Now, if we go to a mobile application, and really out of time for that, the support for deployment is really in the IDE is really extensive, because you can deploy to Apple, macOS, and iOS Store. You can deploy to the Google Play Store, and all of the steps are done straight from the IDE, like we've seen here. I mean, creating the Apex is just a matter of calling a bunch of command line utilities in sequence with some odd parameter. It's something you can do manually, but honestly, it's quite a pain. And the fact that the IDE simplifies it, you just need to throw in a couple of settings, and then it's a done deal. I mean, well, once you know what to put in, but it's really straightforward. And so even more for other scenarios where you need to reach out to tools and utilities that are running on your Mac while you're compiling from Windows. So this going across versions, across machines or virtual machines, and being able to run utilities on a different system is what it happens via PA server, which is our remote deployment / debugging / tool chain operations utility, which is a very nice model. So you have this small application sitting somewhere on the target machine, whether it's Linux, it's a Mac, or even Windows, and then you do all of the operations in terms of deployment and the various steps, the code signing or whatever is required by the platform, and you also do the debugging on the platform through the same utility. So it's a quite powerful mechanism that extends the IDE reach even outside of your Windows development machine.
Yeah, it is very cool. You know, I've been doing a little bit of coding in the evenings recently, and getting an app submitted up to the Android and the iOS store, and you know, the same structure with the manifest files and the everything going into the IDE, just setting it all up. It makes it so simple to work through, having the same kind of approach to kind of get out to all the different stores, which is brilliant. Yeah, I think just kind of circling back to the question we had at the start about kind of the IDE being on different platforms. I think one of the great things that we also have that you can use from the IDE when you're building and deploying here, and especially when you're working out on the different platforms, is the PA server, which is installed. It comes in the PA server folder in the root of the install location for Rest Studio. And that makes life deploying out really simple as well. I was doing some stuff on that server recently for an example. I needed to get it deployed up onto a Windows server to test it under IIS, and being able to use PA server directly from there just to be able to push out the deployment, and it picks up all the files and the dependencies and the features, and no more kind of searching through what libraries and bits are being used by your application. It just packages it all up and pushes it all out for you. So that's another kind of key tip, I'd say, is look around the PA server side.
Yeah, and whenever we run commands locally, whether it's for Windows, for the UWP, or for Android, we are calling another utility which is called PA client. Not exactly the same thing, because PA client is local, so it's executed like every time. It's not like sitting there waiting for you. It's like a helper that goes between the IDE and the target operations. But you see, for example, here that for that deployment, we end up executing PA client a bunch of times with different parameters.
Awesome. Okay, so thank you, Marco, thank you, David, and also thank you everybody online for the chat and the conversations we've been going through. David, anything you want to kind of finish off with? Any kind of comments from any of the other questions that have come through? Anything you want to feedback on? I think you're muted, David.
I am muted. Thanks. I saw David I posted in the chat as well a bunch of really useful tips about breakpoints as well. So that's I mean, if you haven't just scanned through the chat there, it's worth doing. He also posted a link to a Tools API book written by one of our MVPs, David G. Hoyle, which is a really great reference. If you're interested in adding stuff to the IDE, that's a good way to get started. We try to encourage people to extend and add on to IDE functionality. It's really great to see some of the stuff people come up with.
Yeah, there's also, I know you did a code rage session a while back on doing the Open Tools API, because you've done quite a few add-ons as well yourself, which was really good. And there's some templates that you'd uploaded from Alan Bauer's original talks around that area. So there's some great stuff out there from David, from Alan, from the books that have been referenced in the chat as well. So yeah,
Bruno theorems as well. If you want to create a docked window, then Bruno theorems of TMS write a really good PDF showing how to do that as well, which is worth looking for.
Great. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for connecting in, for joining us, and getting involved. And I hope you found the session useful. It's been quite a bit of fun. As I say, we're trying to do these in a slightly different way. They're, as you've seen, very live, very unscripted. Some kind of loose topic areas to kind of work our way through. Yeah, it's been great to kind of get in and go through these bits again today. I say if you do have any, I'm just going to share my screen here very quickly. If you do have any kind of topics that you'd like to cover in future sessions, then we've been doing this with our local partners in the UK, Grey Matter, and they're doing a great job of kind of collating back from different people around the UK and further afield any specific topics. Please feel free to drop them a message through, or if you've got any questions about the products that you want to kind of direct through, they're there to help as one of our master resellers as well. So feel free to drop them a message through too. And just a reminder, obviously for those, I know a number of you are connected up through the UK, but wherever you are in the world, definitely worth looking out for your local user groups, especially times like now, and they're a great place to be able to connect up and join in and just kind of share the conversation and share this kind of interactive way of getting tips and tricks to improve your developer productivity, and also just kind of make sure you feel like you're not just alone. I know a lot of us are working from home more and more at the moment, and it's a great way to be able to kind of keep up and improve our skills and kind of keep connected with everybody. Okay, so thanks very much, everybody. Any last comments from you guys?
Just I really enjoyed the kind of impromptu format, and thanks for joining, and I will see you next time on whatever the next topic, the next meeting is.
Sure. Yeah, same here. I mean, it's been interesting and quite fun. Yeah, we can keep this going if there is interest.
Great. All right, guys. Thanks very much. Have a good day. Happy coding. See you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.